Another layout manager that we can use is called the Grid Layout Manager. And it basically divides your frame into something like a grid of rows and columns. So when you're creating your grid layout, you are going to specify how many rows and how many columns it's going to have. And then you're going to go to every cell, basically row column combination, and say what to put there. So when you're creating it, the grid layout, we are going to specify the number of rows and number of columns. And then in every cell, we are going to say what we're going to put there. So let's look at an example here. I set my layout to new grid layout with 2 rows and 3 columns. So those are my 2 rows and I have my 3 columns. And then I go into each one of those grids and I add something. Now, the order that you add the items to the frame in. So here, like this is the code at the end of that's adding to the frame. Because this is 2 by 3, that means it has 6 content panes. And so I need to have 6 lines of code to add. And it's going to start adding with the first cell, and then it's going to move on to the next cell, the third cell. And when it's done with 1 row, it's going to move on to the next row. Okay, so this is how we do it. So here, because I wanted to add a label and a button in each one, what I did was I created a panel for each one. So I created all my 6 buttons, I created all my 6 labels, and then I created 6 panels. And in each panel, I added a label and a button. So panel 1 has label 1 and it has button 1. And so then I added my 6 panels. Let's go to our code and see how we can do this. So our window has number 1, a label and a text field, a label and a text field, 3 buttons and 2 checkboxes. So we can think of it as maybe 1 row, 2 rows, the 3rd row has 3 items in it, and the 4th row. So let's say we are going to make it 4 rows and we're going to make it 2 columns. Let's try that. So I'm going to come here and say, let's close it first, new grid layout, and we're going to make it 2 rows. No, actually I want it to be 4 rows and 2 columns. Okay, and I want to put in the first row, I want to put number 1 with its text field. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a small panel. So I'm going to just call it row 1 equal to new. Actually, sorry. This is going, how do I want it drawn? I have to actually think. Let's think first how I want it to look like. So what I want to do is I want it to say number 1 and the box next to it, and then number 2 and the box next to it. And then I'm going to just put like here, like the 3 boxes. And then I'm going to have my the first checkbox and the second checkbox. Okay, so those are my 4 rows and those are my columns. So that means I want to add number 1 first, the label, and then I want to add the text field. Let's go and do that. So actually here I don't have to create a panel. So I'm going to do all my adding at the top just so I see what I'm doing. So I created a label and I'm going to add the label. So label 1 has been added. And then I created my text box and I'm going to add my text box. Okay, so now I have my first row. Let's go and do the second row. So I'm going to add label 2. And I'm going to add the second text box. Now to make things simpler, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually ignore one of those buttons. So let's make them only 2 buttons. Let's remove the subtract button for now. And we don't need the button group information for now. I'm just going to remove it to make it a little bit easier to see what's happening in terms of the grid layout. Okay, so I added a button and I'm going to add my button 1 and I'm going to add button 2. And let's remove the answer for now. And we have our checkboxes that we're creating. And I'm going to add the first checkbox 1. I'm going to add my second checkbox. Let's just remove all that code at the bottom because we don't need any more adds because we did our adding in the middle. Okay, let's see what this looks like. And so now I have my GUI. It's not the most beautiful GUI, but here I have my, each row I have my label and my text field, label, text field. I have my radio buttons and I have my checkboxes. So if you have something like, for example, a calculator or something like a puzzle, you can display it in a grid layout. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is just borders. You know, borders around things make it a little bit nicer to view. So any J component that we have, any container has a set border method. And so you can go to it and call a set border method. Now, to create those methods, there are static methods in a class called border factory. So border factory is part of the swing class, package, and it has some static methods. So here are some static methods that it has. And what I did here was just list a few of them. So here I have a label and I want to add a label, a border to this label. So I can go to the label and say set border. Now I need to create a border. So I'm going to go to the border factory and say create me a matte border or a raised bevel border or a titled border. So I'm just going to use one of them. So I'm going to use the create titled border on one of my components. So let's come here and let's go to the number 1. Well, right now it has a label, but let's just add a border to it just to see what it does. I'm going to say label 1, set border. Okay. And I'm going to go to the border factory. And there's a lot of create borders. So I'm going to say create, let's do a create bevel border. Okay. Let's give it a width of, let's say, 20. Oops. And let's give it a yellow and a black. Let's try that. Let's see what that does. And it didn't do anything. Let's see. Oh, I haven't tried this one actually. Let's see. Let's try one of those that I've tried. Let's try the matte border. And here it takes different values. Let's just see what happens when you give different numbers. The best thing here is to read the documentation. Okay. Let's make it blue so we can see it.